We need to teach our children to be holy. To be holy means to be set apart. And we have to train our kids to be comfortable with not being like the world.
I would love to hear from both of you, like what your moms did to help you be courageous and bold.
You can go ahead.
Well, I've a ton of thoughts. So in regards to like being called names, but also being called one of the most polarizing names, because pretty soon just to be called a Christian is going to be challenging. Yeah. And this is, listen, I work with students. I work with high school students, and I work with a K through 12 school. And the thing that we need to do is we need to teach our children to be holy. To be holy means to be set apart. And we have to train our kids to be comfortable with not being like the world. So for instance, my son, and this is going to sound crazy, he's 15 years old and he doesn't have a cell phone.
Amen
Why?
To this, yes.
Why doesn't he have a cell phone? Because I know the research. I know what happens. I know that the sooner kids get cell phones, the more likely they are to engage in sexual activity, the more likely they are to be bullied, the more I sit in the class and I watch kids fall asleep in English. I'm like, why are you falling asleep? Because you're on your phone all night, because you're playing video games all night. So we have to help our kids learn to stand apart right here. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I sometimes do things with my kids, even if I don't necessarily disagree with it, but just because I want them to be different. Just because I need you to learn to stand here when everybody else has it and you do not. Be different than everyone else and find out who you are. You don't have to be like the crowd. And we really have to train, and that's how you train leaders, is to be different and to be willing to be not like everyone else. But don't get me started on this cell phone issue.
We should have you back for a whole show, because I'm ready to do a whole live stream about the cell phone issue.
That's very good.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, because you're really on this thing right now about parents being courageous. You don't seem to have any problems with that. And
no.
What is it that your mother did in training you, or what conversations did she had that?
And my mother was completely secular.
I know.
Let's just be honest. But and I'll get to that in just a second. I do think that in looking at boldness, that idea of righteousness or be holy, that is a lot of what is behind that. We see, if you go into Target right now, or maybe Walmart, or any of these pop stores, everything is be kind. And I just want to take a marker and scratch it out and say be holy. And I tell Krista this all the time. I think we might even do a shirt be holy, be righteous, because kind is the culture's definition of kind. It's not kind to speak
It's truth. The new moral code.
It is. It is the new moral code.
I just read it was the 11th commandment. I forget one of those books I read.
Vodi Bakum.
I think it was Vodi. Yeah. Good job.
My uncle, yeah. He says, that's the 11th, this kindness thing is the 11th commandment. And it's well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean when you're telling me to be kind, yet you have it really big on your shirt, be kind? Well, I'm no, can we be holy? Can we be righteous? Can we get back to something that actually has a standard? But to me, that there has to be a level of boldness with that. It's going to take a level of courage to be holy. It takes a level of courage, a level of knowing who you are, understanding your identity, to actually stand in righteousness, to stand for something. Now, what did my mother do? My mother, God bless her, it was probably abusive. I probably should be talking to somebody right about now.
Listen, some of us have just confessed.
She would always tell me, Kiki, this is my family name. Look, I'm putting it out there for everybody to see. Kiki, you don't need to be afraid until I get afraid, and I'm not afraid. Kiki, you don't let people talk to you any kind of way. Kiki, if this is right, you stand for what is right. You don't just go along with the crowd just because you're going to jump off. And she would say, you're going to jump off a mountain, all your friends jump off the cliff, you going to jump off too? You need to be somebody different. And when I wasn't someone different, I was in trouble. If I wasn't standing for the right things and doing the right things, then I would get in trouble. She would not allow me to passively sit by and not use my voice when my voice needed to be used.
And when you say you would be in trouble, you would be punished.
I would be punished. I would be in trouble. I remember riding the bus one day, and this lady kept kicking the back of my seat, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, and I was like in second or third grade. I told you I should be talking to somebody. And she was like, well, tell the lady to stop kicking your seat. And I was like, well, can't you tell her? She was like, no, you need to tell her stop kicking your seat. And so I turned around and I told the lady, please stop kicking my seat. It really bothers me. And she kind of blew me off, and I turned around and I just kind of was like, oh. And my mother just like literally watched it all play out, and the woman turned around and she kicking my seat again. It's just knocking my little 8, 9-year-old self. And I told her, I was like, she's still kicking my seat. And my mother said, you need to turn around and tell her not to kick your seat. And this time you need to tell her like you mean it. And at 9 years old, I turned around and I went all the way off on this lady. Now, my mother didn't mean that. She did not mean for that to happen. But these are some of the ways in which my mother raised me to know, one, you stand for what's true. You can speak up for yourself. You don't have to let people treat you any kind of way because you don't deserve to be treated that way. And so when I think about raising this generation now, because I have 3 nephews, my brother has 3 boys, and I'm like, how do we raise them to know who they are and to be able to stand? How do we raise a generation to stand, a generation that's not going to be easily tossed to and fro?